Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. I'm Matt,
And I'm Eric.
and we will be looking this week at Zack Snyder's own personal Star Wars, Rebel Moon Part 2, Scargiver, now on Netflix. But before we dive into that wonderful experience, in which I didn't realize, but poor Eric had to watch Part 1 and Part 2 all together, which is about 5 hours of his life he'll never get back. We are going to talk about the first one's at least 2.5 hours, and the second one.
It feels that way, doesn't it? But with almost 10 minutes of credits, that movie's
I
runtime
forget Netflix has like a billion minutes.
the runtime with credits is only 2 hours and 16 minutes. Which means that movie is barely over 2 hours, and it feels like an eternity. But I guess we'll get to that.
But first, the big movie that jumped into theaters this week is Abigail, which comes from the team behind the last two Scream movies. Directors Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette. This one, it's supposed to be a simple job, just 6 cons kidnapping a little girl, holding her for 24 hours, and then a huge payday, but it does not turn out to be quite that simple. 6 strangers, played by Melissa Barrera, Dan Stevens, William Catlett, Catherine Newton, Kevin Durand, and Angus Cloud come together, kidnap a little girl, played by Alicia Ware, who all we know about her is she's the daughter of somebody important, and she likes a little ballet. The man that orchestrated the job for them, Giancarlo Esposito, gets them a nice little house to stay in. They just need to keep her calm while he negotiates a deal for them. And in 24 hours, they're going to have a lot of money. But you know what? Turns out to be a child vampire. And they turn out to be locked in the house with her. Not a great combination. I'm going to be honest, Eric. The first thing that I thought when I was watching this is, I don't like the marketing people for this movie, because that was
the first thing I was
good chunk, like the first half hour of this movie, where there's a lot of mystery about this little girl and what she belongs to and what weird things are happening. But the first thing, literally, they show you in the trailer is that she's a vampire. And I think they could have cut a trailer that would have made you interested in this movie without giving that away, and it would have been so much powerful. That being said, I'm still giving this movie a thumbs up. I had a great time here. This was a pretty good script, better than I was expecting from kind of a genre film. I liked a lot of the character back and forth, the setup, some of the early act stuff. Alicia Ware is incredible as a preteen vampire. Melissa Barrera, who was in those Scream movies with these directors, and Dan Stevens are incredible. Giancarlo Esposito is really good. When he comes back kind of in the third act, you get a special pop-up guest I won't ruin, because that was the one thing they never showed you in the trailers, which I really enjoyed. There is a lot of big, over-the-top violent action that really works in the third act here. Some really fun moments. I thought Catherine Newton was really fun. She was even more fun after something happens to her, and she takes a real character turn. There was a lot to like here. I just wish they would have marketed it a little different, or I hadn't seen the trailer 7,500 times.
So here's the disappointing thing, is we already have precedent set that shows that you can do this with a movie, and it's Barbarian. They sold in the trailer, there's something tense going on in an Airbnb. Maybe Bill Skarsgård's the bad guy. You go into the movie, and word of mouth exploded because of the twist in that movie and what happens. How do you have this movie and not see that all you do in the trailer is have a bunch of people say, hey, you kidnapped a girl, you have to make it 24 hours until the purchase is there, and then just give the suggestion that the house is haunted or that there's a creature and just leave it at that.
You could have even showed them being locked in and something weird happening without, because that's literally kind of the early entree into the fact that they give everything away, including some, after having seen the movie, the trailer has some third act sequences it's unfortunate. And that trailer was out everywhere. The reason I made the joke about 7,500 times, they had it on TV. They had spots, I think during the Super Bowl or in the immediate aftermath, something like that. It's been in front of like every movie since I think Thanksgiving time.
Yeah.
Because we've been talking about it for like since the end of last year.
Mm-hmm. And it's like they couldn't wait to spoil it. Like I like there are movies like Get Out, like there are so many movies that sell themselves off of the vibe and tone and a few catchy images, and you don't need to get that big of an audience to get people to go in, freak out over how much would have unfolded in the twists and turns in this movie, and want to tell all their friends about it and be like, just like,
Well, and you gotta think these directors and writers who their company that they operate under, you might have heard is Radio Silence Productions. They also did a pretty fun movie called Ready or Not. I don't know if you, I assume you saw that one because you're a fan of the genre. I thought that was clever. They did that before they ever did the Scream movies. They might be building enough cachet that hopefully they'll be able to do better marketing. But this would have almost been like, I guess they almost do in the trailer for Nope, the kind of tell you what's going to happen. But it's, movies that spend a fair. I was surprised, honestly, when I was in it that, it's an hour and like 49 miles
like
so you're like an hour and 40 minutes. They spend a good 30 minutes, 35 minutes setting up like, I wonder what's going to happen here. And you're like, well, we already know she's a vampire. We're just waiting for her to vampire you. Only to realize they have this great kind of story about this mysterious boogeyman who had been doing things that's a mythology that they're building into that I just, I wish they had done a little bit of a different marketing campaign because it's still really enjoyable, but I think it could have hit even harder if you didn't know what you were going to see.
If even if they wanted to show she was a vampire, if they at least had not shown you her out of the handcuffs, there still would have been like, you walk into the movie and you're like, wait, there's another creature in the house? Like there something. But no, they went out of their way to show you as much as within out of reason that they could. But here's the thing. Catherine Newton is a star, like Scream Queen, whatever you want to call it. Her and Lisa Frankenstein in this, to me, like I'm sold on any movie she's gonna be in if it's like a genre movie. Like I was into it even when she was just this scared girl. Like the sequence where she walks up to what you're pretty sure is Abigail's coffin, and she's freaking out. And
I thought it was going to be a coffin too.
Yeah, she opens it and it's empty, and she almost looks even more sad, like and upset.
And then she finds that horrendous pool.
Yeah, it was.
I would have been looking for a shower.
Yeah, like she's just defeated when she comes back. She's like, "I'm here." Like that dance sequence between her and Alicia Weir, who Alicia Weir was outstanding. They like, I feel like they could have built this movie around her. Like she was just like through the makeup.
Melissa Barrera was really good too. And
yeah, she was great.
Dan Stevens, this is the second of 3 films we're gonna get from him.
Dan Stevens, his kind of, if he leaned a little hard into when I know an actor is not like a New Yorker and they try and like lean into that, and he's got these like glasses, he just come across to me like an actor wearing props, but like I was sold on the character and the motivations. It just felt to me like this character is doing an accent for some reason. So like he was fine. Like I didn't have any problems with him, and I loved where it all went. But that's the one thing. To me, this movie kind of does a From Dusk Till Dawn kind of thing, except they accidentally spoiled it, where in the beginning, it's sort of like a crime film, and they try and do like the Reservoir Dogs thing, like, hold up here, we've done the score, don't use your real names, something fishy's going on. That aspect of the movie, I thought, came across a little corny. And I feel like that if that had been taken a little less tongue-in-cheek, a little more grounded, I think it would have been more interesting and suspenseful when the thing does go larger than life and go a little bit camp and turn wild. But I'm giving this one solid thumb up, even though in the theater, the projector was off and it was raised up like 2 feet and at an angle. so I had to watch the whole movie like that. I still pretty much had a blast with it. I love the soundtrack choices with the Swan Lake song and with the other mic drop, needle drops. Yeah, just they really know the vibe. I love these directors. I loved the directors in Scream 6. And even though I didn't quite like the writing in that movie, and just they are really good. This is their wheelhouse, these sort of genre movies, and I really am interested to see what they keep doing. Yeah, but that's, I mean, I like 100% what you said. Like, really, really, the marketing. I
think it
wish
was
I got that
these
first.
same two guys that did both Scream 5 and 6.
Oh well, Scream 5 I thought was directed and had like a good like aesthetic to it. Also, like I did again,
Yeah,
I am way more
they
down on
these.
Scream 5 than anyone I know. So
Oh no, I didn't. But my objection to it is almost the same objection that I made when you and I were chatting about The Force Awakens.
mhm.
Is not
Oh,
is basically all about story. So these two guys both did co-directed Ready or Not and both of the Scream.
okay. Yeah, then they are awesome. Their direction is great. They just need to never work with the writers of the Scream movies again. Like
Well,
just
actually, one of the guy who's in their group. So Scream 6, I'm looking, has 3 credited writers, one of which is Kevin Williamson, one's James Vanderbilt, but one is this guy Busick, who was a the screenwriter who I think is part of this Radio
Radio
Silence
Silence.
group, because he was one of the screenwriters on Ready or Not, and he is one of the screenwriters on Abigail.
Okay, but he not on Scream 5?
I'm looking. I bet you it is. Still, yes, same trio:
Okay.
James Vanderbilt, Kevin Williamson, and so you don't know how much he.
I don't know who is
You know,
doing
when you
what, but
have
I know
3 or
that
4 guys on a thing.
Scream 5 made this weird dumb mistake where they didn't commit to ditching the meta things with horror movies and decided to accidentally make it about not horror movies by bringing up The Force Awakens and talking about toxic internet culture of fandoms like Marvel and Star Wars. And that to me completely unjustified the killers in that movie, who are all like, I'm supposed to represent toxic fanboys online who became murderous, but that doesn't exist the same in genre cultures as it does in geek
So
culture.
part of it, I'm just in horror in particular. I feel like we've had a huge string of going back and trying to reboot classic
Oh yeah.
franchises almost. And in one case, literally only one case so far, it worked brilliantly. And that
Yep.
was unfortunately
Halloween.
David Gordon Green's first crack at Halloween, because that
Yeah.
I remember seeing that in the theaters and thinking, shit, this franchise is back.
And it went
But we've
mainstream. Like,
I know, but then we've seen it, you know, they tried to do that with The Exorcist. It didn't work. You tried to do that with Scream, didn't work.
mhm.
We've seen them try
Chucky.
to do it with Chucky, doesn't work. We've seen them try to do it. They tried a few years before that to remake Friday the 13th. Didn't
Well,
work.
that was already in 2009. That was a whole different Platinum Dunes, Amityville Horror remake stuff. That's another era of like horror.
Well, and then they tried to remake Texas Chainsaw Massacre a couple years ago. That
Oh my
didn't work for me
gosh.
at all. You know, and they almost literally tried the exact formula of Halloween, because they brought back one of the original actors from
Oh, you
and
know what? Fun
characters.
fact about that, they didn't. That actress wasn't available, passed away, I believe. And so they brought back an actress who looked like her to be that legacy character.
That's even worse.
It was that useless. It was so bad.
But I mean, so I just don't know that that always works. I actually kind of liked Scream 6,
I
and
did too. I
where
thought that
they
one was
were able to spin kind of in their own
mhm.
direction. So,
Yep.
you know, and now we'll see if that franchise.
Yeah, I'm just really excited for these directors,
Oh,
and I think Abigail is worth looking because they they clearly have a lot of care for what images they put on screen.
Well,
They
it kind of,
really took care of casting Abigail. They really balanced out the practical gore effects and the makeup effects and the monster designs and all of this stuff.
and if you looked at
That production.
Abigail and Ready or Not, they're doing pretty well with their own original
Yeah.
stuff. I get sometimes you step up and you step into a franchise because it helps raise your profile and get you other opportunities. But I'm hopeful now maybe they'll be just doing their own thing with this group because that seems to work better. Because Ready or not a lot of people I think saw it when it came to theaters. I didn't see it
Right.
in theaters. I saw it later in streaming after some people said it was interesting. Uh,
Mm-hmm. And
and
again, it's like a movie that was success based on word of mouth. I really think someone needs to give them their own chance at marketing their movies, because yeah, it, I know that eventually you're gonna have seen the movie and you see it once. You don't want a movie that is like you don't get the same experience on a rewatch. But whatever, The Sixth Sense is amazing, and I every single time I've watched that, I know what's gonna happen. Like I would relish the experience of having gone into this movie not knowing what was gonna happen. Like that would have been an absolute blast. But
well, that probably would be true for our next movie, which is Rebel Moon Part Two, The Scargiver. Which honestly, so Zack Snyder moving over, doing his thing for Netflix. He did. Was it? It was a zombie movie, I think. The one that was in
Army of the Dead,
Army.
the one that wasted
No,
the
was it
setting and
Army?
put everything in short focus. Oh, are you talking about his first movie, Dawn of the Dead?
No, not Donna. His first. He did that one for Netflix. Yeah, Army of the Dead.
Yeah, Army of the Dead.
I
They're in
It
Las
was so
Vegas.
memorable. I wasn't
No
100% sure. I
kidding.
remembered it was in Las Vegas. I didn't remember its title.
Right.
But now, as part of this deal, he's supposed to be making his own spin on Star Wars. So, Rebel Moon Part One, A Child of Fire, debuted to a great deal of fanfare just before Christmas. So, getting that kind of late December release, I remember there was a lot of buildup. There was a huge marketing campaign, and it is a movie that I watched in 2023. It's about all I'll say about it. So, when we're coming to Part Two of what apparently in interviews he said he has ideas for 6 of these. Whether or not Netflix is going to be down for it will be interesting to see. But I commented to you last week, it seemed like this one kind of sneaking up. Yeah, after all the fanfare for Part One, Netflix really kind of jumped off the bandwagon when it came to bringing these guys back for Rebel Moon Part
Oh, except
Two.
Charlie Hunnam.
The Scargiver, that's right. He got knocked out. Well, what's interesting? A lot of these actors are credited on both, and I don't remember seeing them in the second one. Maybe it's just because it might have originally been
Like one movie.
one movie. I don't know. It picks up almost immediately where the other one left off. This one, even tighter because it's only 2:03 with like that standard Netflix 10 to 12 minutes of credits. So I think it was probably like an hour and 45, which sits a lot better, I think, for an action film. This one is almost all action rather than some protracted character introductions. You have a lot of big fighting set pieces. I think still for me, the Ed Screen is, I guess, fine as an actor, but he was nothing to me as a villain in either one. Could be part characterization. I did like this one, maybe a little heavier on the Jaimin Hansu, who I think is better. We also got the payoff that they seed like in the first 15 minutes of the first movie about Anthony Hopkins voiced robot springing to action. There was a little more about their backstories or their emotional investment that got me more interested in our hero characters, but they're still so amorphous to me that I don't totally remember what any of their character names are. I think if I vaguely remember Jaimin Hansu as a general.
General Titus. That's the only one. Him and Cora are the only names that I even remember from the movie.
Yeah, which is Sophia Boutella. A couple of them are just really kind of, no offense to the performers, who I'm sure giving it their all, kind of fade into the background. I I sometimes
Oh,
have really enjoyed Zack Snyder's work. Watchmen is, if you watch some of the shorts I do on our channel, is one of my favorite films of all time, which is, celebrating its 15th anniversary. There were a few of his DCEU ones that I really enjoyed, but some of his original ones were tough for me. I am probably in the minority that I loathe 300.
okay.
Lately. Uh, I don't know what they were going for with Sucker Punch. Um, Gosh, I feel like there's another one that's in there that we'll hit on. And I really did not enjoy part one that much. Part two, I guess I nominally liked better, just because it was more just straightforward action. I guess part two, I more understood the "this is my Star Wars." Um,
Yeah.
but still, the best I can do is thumbs neutral. I was probably about thumbs down for part one, so a little bit better. I don't know how invested I would be in seeing more of these. If they put
Mhm.
out more, I will watch them. I sometimes really enjoy Zack Snyder. The things that bother people with his use of slow motion and some of his action shooting doesn't necessarily bother me, but it did feel like a lot in this.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll be honest, I watched Rebel Moon back the first one in December and did not feel like I needed the rewatch, even though I don't totally remember what happened in that movie because it was not near and dear to the heart. But you just watched them back to back, so
So here's the deal. Zack Snyder made Dawn of the Dead, and there was an unrated cut. He made 300. It's the only movie he's had, other than Man of Steel, that has not had some sort of other cut to it. Sucker Punch, he has a director's cut of that, and even that he now claims is not a good enough director's cut, and that he could do one better, and he wishes he could go back and do one better.
as you say that, I might
Watchmen
actually
has
be
two.
willing to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, I've
Wa-
actually seen every version of Watchmen too.
Yeah, Watchmen has two director's cuts. Batman v Superman has a director's cut that's infamously better. Justice League has a director's cut that's infamously better.
Well, Justice League, though, the theatrical one isn't. I wouldn't even really say it's his movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. But the
So what you're saying is
Army of the
we
Dead
need to
doesn't have a
wait
director's
for
cut.
the direct yet. What you're
Yeah,
saying
right.
is we
Yeah.
need to wait for the unabridged director's cut, where they make it the Rebel Moon saga, just like they did with all the
Oh,
Godfather movies, where they cut them
Guardians of
all
Cool.
together.
Yeah,
Guardians
and
of
also I
Cool.
forget the Owl movie, Guardians of Cool. That one doesn't have a director's cut. But like, okay,
Yeah.
so here's the thing. I really like Zack Snyder, and I really like his visual style, but I've seen it before. I've seen everything before. He says he's got 6 ideas for Rebel Moon movies. Well, I hope one of them is original, because there's not a single original idea in either of these movies, and that's why there's such a chore to sit through. Okay? And you say it's his Star Wars movies? It is literally his Star Wars movies. He was tapped to direct Star Wars movies, and he described them as the Magnificent Seven or Seven Samurai with Jedi. And what do you know? He makes the movie Rebel Moon, and it's the Magnificent or Seven Samurai with not all Jedi. But like, this is so clearly like, I'm just gonna make the movie and just make it not Star Wars. And then he made it, and guess what? It was Star Wars. And the first one, I'll give it a little bit of points because them actually going out and exploring the galaxy a little to try and find the people. Some of those set pieces are interesting. Like, I love the actress, I don't know her name, from Cloud Atlas and a couple of things. She's got the 2 red swords.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
I'll look it up
she,
right now. Sorry, I was looking at Zack Snyder's filmography because I felt like we were missing a movie.
yeah, well, I mean,
It's Bay Duna, I think.
yeah. So like, I think she's great. Also, like, I think she's another standout. Here's the thing. Part 2 is way better than part 1. It just doesn't have the creativity of those different set pieces of part 1, but part 1 kind of wasted them because nothing original is happening. You know what's going on. You're waiting for the beats to come, and you're just like, and then they're gonna prove that they're really thing, and then someone's gonna betray someone, and then they're gonna fight the bad guy, and then it's gonna take them a long time to fight the bad guy because the bad guy's real strong because he's the main bad guy, and then like everything is so,
Well,
and
and
then
then they thought they killed him, but
oh
there to me is almost a Abigail marketing level mistake. They should not have ended part one with you seeing him being resurrected,
yeah,
because they
I
spend
don't
a
know,
good
whatever,
chunk of the beginning of part two talking about how they killed him and everything's
yeah.
over, and they're
But then, like,
it
if
would
they
have
didn't
been
tell
like
you and he came back, you would be like, "Oh, they're doing that." Like, I don't think I
no,
would have been like,
that could have been
"Oh,
how part two started and not how
yeah,
part
yeah,
one
no,
ended.
100%." I don't know. If I started watching part
I don't know.
two and all of part two was a sequence about how Ed Skrine's character is still alive and we have to deal with him more, I would just be like, "Oh my gosh," and it would
But
just get
that's
padded the
almost
runtime.
is. That is almost what the first 30 minutes of the movie is.
Yeah. So here's the thing I'll say about Zack Snyder in slow motion is it puts so much emphasis on the importance of moments. But since all of these moments, I'm just waiting to get to the next one, I felt the slow motion so much harder in these movies than in any of his other movies because there's no suspense in what's going to happen in those slow motion moments. As soon as the guy from part one is running up the thing, I'm like, oh, so he's going to jump and he's going to sacrifice himself and he's going to die. And I'm sitting here watching him slowly jump and I'm watching him slowly stab the thing. I'm like, when is he gonna get killed? Okay, there it goes. There he got killed.
Cyborg,
Okay, all
Cyborg
right.
from Justice League, Ray Fisher.
Was that Ray Fisher?
Yeah,
Oh, oh. So Ray
the
Fisher dies. Like,
the Resistance pilot leader who dies in the first part.
yeah, yeah. So okay. Oh my gosh. So I think it's just like so. And one thing I'll say for this one is he spends slow motion on the actual community they're trying to solve and on them harvesting grain and on them working together. And it's such a smooth build of like, there's a threat coming. Let's prep for the threat and then have a big battle that like resolves the threat. It's very not choppy, very smooth, even build up and payoff with like well spread out action pieces. And Sophia Botella is great. Like she is someone who was extremely talented, but has been like sidelined as the second villain in Kingsman or the Mummy in the worst Mummy movie.
Or in
Um,
Argyle, or
I don't know why they keep giving her these bangs. I don't know who's like how separate costume designers keep making this choice for her, but yeah,
maybe it's
whatever.
part of her contract at this point.
Maybe, but like it just
You're right. I forgot
she
she was in that Tom Cruise version of the Mummy. I've tried to block
yeah.
that movie out.
Well, again, because she's a talented like performer and she could do all these physical stunts and all these impressive things. And here she gets to be like a human with depth and all this stuff, and she really pulls it off. She's really great. And I wish that there was some tension. There's no tension in the movies. And so part two is better than part one, but I'm neutral on both movies because I'm just like, if you really like explosions and stuff, then you'll probably have fun, but you can also have fun with any other things. You can get better Zack Snyder elsewhere. You can get better Star Wars elsewhere. You can get better, like, it's just needless. Not as bad as like the first Omen needless, but it's just, ah.
Well, I think the first Omen might have been a nominally better film. Yeah.
Better directed, yes. And I'm sorry to say that because again, I am a pretty big Zack Snyder fan and I love his direction and style. But
Okay, since you mentioned this, the 2017 Mummy, because of Sophia Botella, I was thinking about. I remember hating that, and I'm looking. I gave it like 1 out of 10 on Internet Movie Database. But this goes to show you sometimes you can have the greatest like creative team. The three credited writers on that, two of them are David Kep and Christopher McQuarrie, who is an incredible writer, and the director was Alex Kurtzman. I How did
there
it
you go.
fall apart so bad?
Alex Kurtzman. Robert Orci and Alex Kurtzman. We just talked about how much we like that Star Trek trilogy. They got a run of movies, including that first live action Ninja Turtles movie from 2014 with Megan Fox, and Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 2, and Into Darkness. All three of which movies have, we need to get the character's blood in order to, like, it's like the MacGuffin. And two credited writers on each of those movies, Robert Orci and Alex Kurtzman. And Alex Kurtzman is very much someone who seems like a studio player and definitely is the kind of person who could be steamrolled by Tom Cruise into not having his personal stamp on the movie and like whatever. So that explains that movie actually quite a bit, because I actually kind of like in that Mummy movie the American Werewolf in London bits with Jake Johnson. I really like that one aspect of the movie, and that feels like is the most that they're doing with characters that isn't just set pieces and everything that doesn't have to do with the writers. And so I can almost kind of see how the writing of that movie would have gotten sidelined and swept away by Tom Cruise wanting to make a Tom Cruise movie, and Alex Kurtzman just being someone who would sweep to the side and let him do it. But it doesn't save Dr. Jekyll. But we're not talking about The Mummy right now. We're talking about another disappointing movie. So
I wanted it to be, I wanted the first one to be better. I had pretty much no expectations by the time we hit the second one, because we saw where we were going. And now, they clearly end on a sort of cliffhanger note that the princess is not really dead and they need to go reunite with her. And she never really has yet to have her confrontation. While we say Ed Skrein's character was the bad guy, the real bad guy is the one we see in part one that doesn't even appear in part two, which is her father. Yeah. Her father. That's who she's gonna have to face down on. So do you think that Netflix will go in to make another one? Let me see if.
Yes, I think they do. But and I'll tell you what, if they got a better villain, if they wrote in a better villain, like someone who has kidnapped the princess or something, I bet you that could solve a lot of problems. And I'd be if I see a preview for the next movie and there is a newly established villain with like a strong actor in the performance, I would probably be okay with watching a third one of these, because that guy, they wrote him to be dumb, and his performance is not great, and his costuming is ridiculous. And that kind of takes away a lot of the stakes for me, because when Sofia Boutella shoots the princess like glows white and something magical happens that no one in the room understands. And then the bad guy is just like, okay, she's dead. And like, yeah, hey, like, I'm gonna ignore the fact that anything weird just happened. Like, you're the one that murdered him. I'm gonna move on with my plans now, because I'm a short-sighted villain who wants power, because villains have to be bad guys that want power. Like, I really just do not like the villains. And I think that's why I care so little about the outcome of the action.
Well, so it doesn't list a third one as being in production yet, but it does show Army of the Dead has both a sequel film and a sequel series that's in production.
Yeah, I doubt we'll see those. If we do, I'd be interested in an Army of the Dead sequel, because I liked some of the mythology he tried to set up around how the culture of zombies work. He just needs to freaking stop being his own director of photography. Zack Snyder. Rebel Moon 1 and 2 look like 300. That's not good. That movie was made in 2007. We can all see the green screen. When you fake blur the background, it makes it look like a student film. Oh my gosh, make your movies look better than that. You can do it. And stop shallow focusing on things. Get a director of photography you trust. Oh my gosh.
Did you like 300?
I actually very much enjoyed 300, but I've also read the graphic novel, and Frank Miller and Zack Snyder, that movie makes a lot of sense with those two minds being together. And I very much think that that movie is a product really of like the 80s that just took too long to get made. And I think it would be served a lot. I really think you couldn't make that movie any other way, because the only way that it is interesting is in having this graphic, hardened kind of like tone to it. Like, if you're not going to actually care about Spartan culture and history and do it that way, and you want to do this crazy stylized, almost mythological thing, and then that's the way you do it. Like, I don't have any real issues with that. It's just, I don't think if you made that movie today, it would be considered good, or it would be, I don't think it would work, you know?
No, I don't consider it good.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, it is definitely revolutionary and influenced a lot of, for better or worse, the way action is directed. Like with Zack Snyder coming up with that 3-camera recording at the same time at different frame rates, so you can do that slow, fast motion thing that was created in that movie. Like, a lot of people can't stand that slow motion, fast motion influence and stuff ended up in a bunch of other movies, but I mean, there's a reason it did. It resonated a lot. It was unique looking. Definitely, there is no movie not directed by Zack Snyder that looks like 300. And I think that's the most interesting thing about it. But again, it's starting to look dated. It's like, it was made in 2007. And like, if you keep trying to make movies the same way, then your movies are starting to look like that. My gosh, The Village in Rebel Moon Part 1, I actually had to switch devices that I was looking at, because my phone has an OLED screen, right? So it has a unique thing. So looking at that level of detail in that, you can see, I think they call it fire, flame, something like that. You can see green on the characters' faces that they didn't digitally remove from the green screen behind them. And you can see like fake CGI smoke billowing from things, and like everything looks really, really fake. And then they got into some of the action sequences, and it was clear this was like sanitized. So there are times that characters pretend like they're being dead because they got smacked like this with something, and it's like, okay, at least in 300 it's rated R and they're spraying gore, but this is clearly supposed to be PG-13 Star Wars for the family. And I'm not sure that works
For the
as
family.
well. Yeah, I'm not sure that really works as well. I think Zack Snyder should maybe stick to R-rated, but I don't know.
Well, that'll do it for us today. You know, if you're gonna only see one of these movies, definitely make sure it's Abigail. But Rebel Moon Parts 1 and 2 are now available on Netflix. Abigail now playing in theaters. Next week we will be back. We're definitely going to be looking at Challengers, hoping to get to the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which also opened this week, the latest from Guy Ritchie. And we will be talking Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, because it is turning 25 this year, which is almost hard to believe, and it's coming back into theaters on the first weekend in May. So be something for you to check out. So you can check that out with us next week. Until then, we'll see you guys at the movies.